experience for them too, because as they will pursue their career in future, they will know this is important, this is exciting, and they will keep doing it. And in addition, at FSU, you have a lot of modules already developed, right? The teachers that you work with, it's not a question, how do we, make those available?
Well, there are two things, my understanding is there are two things in this process. And we have to be very careful. One is, you spend a lot of time explaining how we as the university level people with postdocs and slightly different level of understanding of these things, how we interface through these modules or through our apparatus with the students directly by making this. But the point is, there is always, if we won't make it massive, if we won't make it global, the teachers are going to be doing it. So in other words, we cannot go to every school and do that, right?
Yeah.
So it's the teachers that they have to be involved and give input,
yes,
because at their level is the ones that are going to, do the job,
absolutely,
right? So, so the teachers is key to all of this, and at their level, and getting them involved and see what they don't understand and how we can make it understandable to them.
yes.
So I think. So that's why, I think it's we have to be slightly careful with graduate students because they are at different levels.
Yeah. So,
But my idea was who in the global market will be the emissaries to the teachers.
Well, that's the
Right.
workshop. We have the workshop, so they give the input after you make the module. This is really the generic teacher can address, can satisfy the level of the generic teacher.
But what Susie's saying is not taking that.
Teaching the teachers.
You do it in Tallahassee with your workshops there, but then you have to have emissaries globally, and that's where I can't.
Once the module is developed, is self-sufficient. The module, the idea.
So it's completely self-evident to the teacher. You don't need
I
somebody.
think that's not going to fly.
Yeah.
I think that even if it's self-evident, if you have somebody who goes in and personally meets with the teachers
It'll
and
be
shows
better.
this to them, your success
It'll be more effective.
N times higher
Yeah.
than if you just send out
Right.
information that's
Yeah.
going to sit in a pile on the bottom of the desk and never be looked at.
But this is a second layer problem, right? The first thing is we have to not just involve the graduate students and make something that's
absolutely.
for
Just like in those things that I showed, right? The teachers are being trained to do it, right?
Right.
But
that's why
the question is,
fellowship of teachers.
Yeah. So the teachers will be supported by fellowships you mentioned, right? But then the question is, being active researchers, right? You probably will not be able to do it, to do all the efforts just by researchers. Otherwise, we will be very restricted in terms of what we can provide. But if we advise the students who help in doing this, right? So then, and they, they do have some time because they are supported by this. Instead of grading homework as a teaching assistant, they are helping to develop this, to write, little description, to maybe produce a web-based, applet, for example, for this. So,
but I think Vlad's point is that when you have a graduate student and he's a TA, he's an RA, you spend 80% of your time in our evaluation. Every time you have an evaluation every year, 8% is for every graduate student you have, because you spend 8% of your time with the RA. If he's a TA, you're spending even more because you have to teach the course together with you. So that means the faculty member that's going to be advising that student as far as that part of his work, his outreach part, he has to be involved a fraction of his time, or his finite fraction of time. Last point is you need a professional person to sort of be this full-time person advising these people.
Well, so in a sense, it's a good idea to involve the outreach people in the universities, absolutely. But, then to some extent we separate ourselves from the whole process, right? Because, I think that the bad thing is if the faculty, right, evaluates the ideas together with the students and then they work with the teacher, right, to make it, appropriate for the high school student or whatever level we target in a particular case, right? So, well, I think that.
Well, listen, I think we have to be a little mindful of the time at this point because we've spilled over into the coffee break and so on, and we have some other activities for today. Let's get a comment from Jim and maybe one more comment, and then I think we should break. But it's a great discussion, and you guys, of course, can continue this during the break. Go ahead, Jim.
Just one question. If I'm a person applying for such a fellowship, would I, in my proposal, make a case for the research that I want to do, and then for the outreach I want to do? Would that be the model, and then it would be judged on these two components?
Yeah, I think this is a really good idea, in the proposal, I think the student should express, what is it that he wants about developing, and so that way we could evaluate whether, this outreach committee could evaluate whether this is doable, this is feasible, appropriate, right? Hopefully if there will be many proposals, right, then you will need to award them the best ones.
Well, suppose you get a proposal for lousy research but great outreach.
Yeah, but
you envision something like that as happening?
Well, in this proposal will be on the outreach, but based on the research. So the research will not be evaluated in a sense.
My feeling about this is that when you have TAs in a university, you have RAs. The TAs and the RAs don't have an agenda. They get involved with either the person who has the grant and they follow that proposal of the grant, or if they are TA, they go to a course and they follow the course of the teacher, the instructions of the lead teacher. So I think it has to be a model like that. So
I disagree. Excuse me, I got to interrupt because I completely disagree with that. Because I think it would be unfair to graduate students to say that they don't have an agenda and that they only follow it, because the existing model strongly biases it in that direction. And I've been a member of one of the IGR grants where it's actually completely different, because the IGR fellowships were awarded to the students. The students were able to develop their own agenda that they had to do in collaboration with the faculty, but they were able to pursue the fellowship in a very independent way. So I'm sorry, I have to disagree with that model, and I think that what Ivan's proposing is something much more like the IGR, but applied in an outreach context. And I would suggest that, in fact, we should look and see if we might be able to propose this as an IGR. Because if we could, I think it would be a very novel IGR, but I think it would have to build in what Jim is talking about. It would have to build in high quality research and outreach. But I'm sorry to interrupt and disagree with you, but I think because I'll take the chair's prerogative and close off this discussion for right now, so we can have some coffee, which we spilled into the coffee break, and we can actually, as part of the town hall forum, continue the discussion about outreach during the town hall forum. And so thanks again, Ivan, for provocative and interesting talk. And let's go ahead and go out to the coffee. We're now in the town hall meeting phase of ICAM, but I thought we could open it up for a discussion about outreach. If there's any further ideas. I might just add, we were discussing some out in the hallway. Susie and David and I, along with Jesse Singh, who's a graduate student, and Robert Hare, who's a graduate student here. And these two, by the way, are working on the project of building a GPU cluster that ICAM can use for computations. But we were just discussing some about the idea of sort of building on what Iman suggested and going for an IGR proposal that could be in the area of outreach plus research. I think for an IGR, so IGR stands for Integrated Graduate Education and Research Training. The sort of boundary conditions for an IGR proposal is that it has to be an area of science and NSF would support. It has to be research oriented. It typically has to involve multidisciplinary. They love to have an international component. They love to have a business, a corporate component if possible. There has to be some impact on the curricula of the universities that participate in the IGRs. And there has to be probably shared mentorship of the graduate students, preferably between disciplines. And so at least as a quick envisioning of that, and there's another IGR competition this year. The IGRs, when they began about 11 or 12 years ago, it was very easy to get them. And some proposals which frankly looked pretty weak on the science were able to get IGRs. That's changed, and now it's very hard to get them. And I think it's about 1 in 20 proposals from start to finish get funded. So it's very competitive. But anyway, there is a call for IGRs right now, and it's occurred to us that something like what Yvonne was talking about, but that would not necessarily be pure outreach, because I don't think that would fly to an IGR, but something that Yvonne was talking about that would be spread between the U.S. ICAM branches, because IGRs can only involve, strictly speaking, U.S. institutions, and the graduate students have to be U.S. citizens or permanent residents. But certainly that would be something that could be very interesting, and we could lean on the ICAM network, the existing ICAM network, a lot to build on that. So I might just throw that out as an idea, and I think what you would, I believe what you would need is a relatively narrow research focus area and interested people.
But it can't be disconnected, the research area from the outreach. I mean, you're going to have two disconnected.
No, that's what I'm saying. This would be an experiment where the outreach is strongly coupled to the research, but it has to be a narrow enough research area. At the same time, you know, the research, the IGR that got funded here at Davis, that I was part of, was on nanoparticles, the energy, the environment, and technology. That's pretty broad. I'm not sure you could get away with something quite that broad now, but it still is possible. You might.
What I remember about IGRs, maybe I'm getting mixed up about the programs, but Homer Neal and I got one of these a time or two for Michigan in the days when I was working for him. This was long ago. And I thought I remembered that we had to provide quite a lot of matching money from the institution in order to get the money from is it NSF or not? And that.
Are you sure you're confusing IGRs with National Needs Fellowships?
Well, it could be that I.
Those are Department of Education.
Could be that. Yes, this was a yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the IGRs are different. They're researcher driven.
Okay.
They're through the NSF, nominally through the Education Division of NSF.
Okay, got it.
Right, but they're different, and now the NSF has dropped the matching requirements anyway, as far as I understand it. So.
Okay, so it's just money.
It's money, but it's money with, you know, 100 pages of proposal if you get past the pre-proposal stage.
Yeah.
I understand that this has been one component of what we want to do, right? One component.
Right.
Sure. But I mean, in terms of developing a particular concept for, say, a module or something like that. Right? But at some point, this has to be further developed with the involvement of teachers, how to make it aidable at the table of students at the master's skill too. So this cannot completely satisfy.
Of course not. Of course not. But I'm just saying that these represent substantial pots of money. That I think there's plenty of graduate students who are interested in doing these kinds of things. And that the competition is up. The pre-proposal, the indications of interest, because you can only submit, I think, 5 per institution. So the indications of interest at Davis, for example, that will be then selected among for the 5 possible proposals from Davis, those are due in the first week of February. So it's something we could actually think about, and I'm sure every institution has something like that. It's something we can think about now that could contribute along these lines, but it certainly wouldn't be the only answer. It'd just be one answer that could build on what ICAM already does and work on it.
Presumably this is institution by institution, and so not ICAM-like.
Well, no, we can make it a distributed IGRs.
Do you think you actually could get money for some distribution?
I would not be surprised if there's already distributed IGRs. I have to look and see, but I wouldn't be surprised.
But that's what you have in mind.
That's what I have in mind, yeah.
Why don't we go for the goal? We were talking earlier, yesterday, partly today, about how important it is to increase our own awareness and public awareness of the importance of new approaches to sustainable energy. 1. 2, we also have some genuine expertise in the community on this campus and elsewhere sustainable energy. What about an IGR in which you try to do both those things?
Right.
And you would say that an important part of moving forward on sustainable energy is public education.
Right.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes
And,
sense.
Right.
and God knows this is the most important single
That's a
problem
great idea.
facing the
Right.
planet. Therefore, let's just see how we can construct this. This is not a substitute
That's a
for the
great
grant
idea.
proposal that you and Ivan are putting.
No.
But it sure could be something that could be done right away
Right.
and be done on this campus plus any other campuses. Certainly Colorado would like to do it. I think that you would like to do it. So we start with at least 3 campuses. And then we indicate in the proposal that among the outreach, we give a menu of outreach projects that students could be involved in while leaving it up to them
Right.
to choose from that menu.
There's a lot of other things that go in an IGR, but we got to make sure of is we're going to go and look and see. I'm sure there's IGRs already out there on materials for sustainable energy research. So we got to go out and look and see. You know, we got to do our homework to make sure that we're doing something, you know, really different enough.
But Alex has run an IGR.
Yeah, that was the one I was talking about on nanoparticles, the environment, agriculture, and technology.
So this is a way for her to, if she's got the time in part to get back.
Well, she would not want to be the lead PI, but I'm sure she wouldn't want to be part of it.
Tell us experience with running.
Absolutely, right. Her experiences would be invaluable in that regard. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We've had a few other IGRs on the Davis campus as well.
So I think the question of what might be the lead campus for what is, I think emerged as a really promising idea is to be settled electronically within the next week or so, with your exploring what's really there. As you, Ivan, at what's in Colorado, and we try to find out what's here, and Jim maybe finds out what's in Ann Arbor. There's on a very well-developed energy institute, etc., with rather more of a policy input than happens at many.
But that's actually fine. They like to see, and the philosophy of the IGRs also was that they want to change the way that the science, the training of graduate students is done at universities. And I was sort of responding to that when I talked to you at Stratus, because they really wanted to see it done completely differently. That model that you were talking about, which is still the standard model, you're either an RA or you're a TA, and you follow what you're supposed to teach, or you follow the research project of a particular advisor. They wanted to torque that, and they also wanted to put in curricular changes into the universities.
Unlike the informal science education people at NSF, they're really interested in new ideas.
Yeah. But unfortunately, they're so interested in new ideas that the proposals become highly judged on how novel are your curricular and training ideas. So that's a huge part of the proposals. And a lot of proposals that had outstanding scientists involved, I can tell you from the process, that the science wasn't always the biggest criterion in those. And I know for sure there's one on solar energy, I believe, at Delaware. So we should take a look and see what they've done.
Yeah, my point was very simple, that just like any assistantship, RA-ship or TA-ship, that means you are assistant to someone, and he's the one who basically...
I disagree, and I'm going to say it again.
And
And this is a fellowship. These were viewed as fellowships, so the students had to develop their own proposals, take it, and find mentors to do it. They weren't necessarily supported their whole time. But it's not an assistantship. It's not an apprenticeship. That's why I want to make clear. It's not that. It's a different model.
Somebody has to be there, because the fellow will be there for max 5 years.
Well, these fellowships were 2 years, the way it was implemented.
3 years. So, but somebody has to carry on this responsibility of a bigger program, which is, and he has to have the responsibility to be the carrier of forward of the whole program of this big effort, which is to make these modules, which are...
Yeah, we're mixing two different things. I think, so we have to be careful. Conquer.
Yeah, I was just wondering, these are not fellowships, these are not assistantships. So the question is, normally the students are pretty tied up with doing an assistantship. So this would be on top of what the...
No, this would be but so their research plus outreach, which would be a component of this, that would be paid for. This would substitute for the traditional TAR,
okay, so
at least for a 2-year period.
This would free up some money for research grants, for example. The usual research grants.
Well,
let's say somebody's an RA with me. Yeah.
Yes, right. If you were supporting them, yeah, this would be in addition to that. Yeah. Susan?
Just to address the concerns going on here, one of David's idea that there's sort of a series of things that the students could do. One of the items on that list is making a module within this format, but what's up to the student is what that module is and what it's about.
Not the student alone. He has to have the input from the teachers. He has to run a workshop where...
Well, yeah. But the general in terms of a proposal, the general concept of okay, here's my research, here's a really great thing that would be communicated. And obviously, people are judging who gets these fellowships, and so you get to select the best. Then the process of this fellowship then involves, yes, working with the teachers, with faculty who have agreed to be the mentor.
But I think Vlad's point is that just like, the model is your case, that you are running this web and goes so well, you need a professional or somebody who is working full time, and everybody else, like myself and others.
No, not for the IGR thing.
Not for the
No, again, Strauss, we're jumping to the grant proposal.
Yes.
That we're not talking about. We're still immersed in the IGR and trying to get that right.
Think about the IGR as supplemental money to bring you more students who can do more modules to fit into your plan.
There's one thing here for the question, but I think the bigger picture is how do you do what you want to do, which is how things go.
There, I think, we at the moment have, I think, 3 campuses for potential homes for they make for major outreach efforts. On, let's just say, an emergent times. One is Boulder, one is Florida State, which looks as though it shot itself in the foot, if not higher up, and one might be there. And again, one wants to make, there were so many good ideas, that one would like to make a decision on that pretty quick. But that is, again, one thing that we try to stimulate in the emergent class. Let's call the IGR thing, which was stimulated by the work that Vlad and Ivan have done, and by Daniel's remarks earlier. The IGR is another approach.
Right. But one thing that we could do sort of in association with the IGR, we'd have to propose it to the Board of Governors, but one thing we could do is we could imagine setting aside some amount of cost share money for fellowships, like a couple of fellowships, not the full 10 fellowships, but a couple of the kinds of fellowships that Ivan was talking about. So that we could have that as a little demonstration project. It could be mentioned explicitly in the IGR proposal. The nice thing about that is it wouldn't be subject to the same restrictions as the IGR would. And it wouldn't have, those students could be completely available to do the outreach part. They wouldn't, if that was what really revved their jets, that's what they could do. And that would be in the ballpark, I would suppose, of, $50,000 a year or something like that. We haven't discussed that, but.
So that is the third specific item on which we can go forward.
Right.
And we have, certainly, in my feeling is that if it works, build on it. And the one enterprise that we started, and it really is Susie's or major priority, is finding the effectively as possible. And Susie, on her part, has to think, how does she go about training people to be deputy Susies? I mean, Susie's dream is that she, having started this and carrying through superconductivity, is that she would like to be free to do other things as well. So she would like to be the creative director or director emeritus of EU.org. But if you want to move to that position, we have to identify a successor or successors. One model I thought of is to think of these exhibits in the museum sense. And so what you're looking for are guest curators. And even introducing that term, and perhaps getting the word out that we are looking for guest curators, and what would be involved in the responsibility would be putting together a major exhibit of X, Y, or Z, and we might be looking for, say, 3 guest curators in a hurry for aspects of climate change. If that is the way the community thinks we ought to be moving, that should be our next big push. We could imagine 8 or 10 exhibits that will, make new ones that relate to aspects of sustainability and climate change. And in some sense, it involves to proceed on that in an informed fashion. We have to do something which you have already started on, which is getting a sense of what's out there. We have to get a much better sense of what's out there. And then I think work hard with people like David McKay, and Nate Lewis on what they think are the most important things to try to communicate in. If you had a ranked list, what exhibits you would like up and running tomorrow for them to tell us what they think is. So they should be advisors to the enterprise. But in a sense, we need a subgroup to help work with you on that set of issues.
Right. I mean, there's so many, you opened a huge can in terms of ways one can proceed for this. I'm not sure this is the best discussion environment for doing so, because on the one hand, if you got big enough that you were really doing different exhibits, then yes, bringing guest curators is one way to go, but there's a lot of other aspects besides just the curation. And typically, like for example, the Franklin Institute Science Museum, their exhibit department has their content developers, their exhibit designers, their prototypers, and their graphics, plus 2 people on top of that are overseeing everything. And they don't even do the fabrication in-house. So there's a way in which, even as you change topics, there's a simplicity and a value if you can have a core staff. And you at the very least need someone who can do concept and somebody who can do graphics and someone who can do script writing, just for the research and script writing. And a guest curator would normally assist with the concept and provide and be really the content person and probably write script. And they would typically only do that phase of it. So one of the things, the 2 things that make me unique in what I've contributed here, and one is that I do have this strong science background, which typically, if you look at the art museum models, the curators have PhDs in the field that they're curating exhibits on. Okay, the science museum model is a bit different, but I think you
were trying to.
So one is that I have a PhD, and the other is that I actually am unusual in that I do all of these jobs. Exactly. And usually that is split between different people. And to find one person to do all the jobs I do is not very likely to find two people who can cover all the jobs very, very well, and perhaps work more directly with a guest curator. Because in most cases, there are exceptions, but I don't trust most scientists to have the background to be able to write good exhibit text. It's a niche, it's a difficult niche writing that you need to learn how to do and how to focus stuff. Yes?
Well, as a pragmatic thing, just so that, okay, we're 100 years to superconductivity, basically now. That work was done in Leiden, okay, the discovery.
Right.
So maybe in order to lighten some of our load, okay, we can just say to them, well, if you don't have, you have some people who might be writing things already. If you don't want to do it all in-house, maybe you want to do it with us.
Right.
Okay, and we could have guest curators in the sense that we can enable other people through our portal to do whatever they want to do.
They might even have some money. Maybe Leiden will have some money.
Exactly, this is the thing. They may not have information, full information, to develop a whole new website, because why invent the wheel so many times?
Right. The great idea, but we're actually past that point of wanting guest curator for superconductivity. We should have thought about this a year ago.
Sure.
But it's a great idea.
It is, yeah.
Work with institutions that have particular interest or particular expertise, and to do that much more than I have. I have one or two scientific advisors that I work with that vet all my material, but I haven't, done that bigger step and really done collaborative efforts with people and institutions.
Suppose you had a really smart person who was willing to do the kind of thing that you have done. How hard would it be for such a person to learn to write the HTML code or whatever it is that
I don't
the
write the
website
code,
as good as you do?
What goes in all of the code was, except for a few animations that I did, was actually put together by Steve Hartzog, who's a programmer, very, very talented, outstanding programmer in San Francisco. What goes into the process of developing the exhibit is getting an in-depth understanding of the field, pulling out topics of interest, as I said, comparing that to objectives, creating key stories. But from then you have a whole concept phase, taking into account your audience and their learning styles, and creating what your activities should be. Now this part, the research part and understanding, everyone at a science museum is going through this kind of process when they develop activities to different degrees. There are consulting firms that have people who do this for museums, for National Park Service. But one of the difficulties that, as I understand it from ICAM's attempts to work with museums, is there's a very different focus, and one of the things that I bring from having been a research scientist is the ability to communicate with you guys. On some level, I don't quite understand, it has to do with I understand what you value and what you like to see emphasized, or I explain it to you in a way that you get it. I don't know.
I think there are people like that at science museums, but the problem that I saw when I interacted with science museums was that inevitably, particularly when you went to informal science education, they would have to take the lead. And then your agenda, even if you're providing some support, some financial support, your agenda is gone. It becomes the agenda that will actually get the proposal.
Informal science education, in a sense, has an agenda.
Yeah,
and the science museums have fit what they do into that agenda in order to get the funds. And they're I talked to the program officer about 4 or 5 years ago and walked away saying, not the place for me to get money.
Right.
They're very strict agendas there. So, but there is that's the one side. Then you get to the concept, and then you get to storyboarding and the script writing and graphics, and these are very often done by different people. And so the question is, it really depends who you find, what their talents are, and
thinking about the superconductivity, thinking about the superconductivity part, which is the next part.
Right.
is the picture that, assuming money could be found, that you would like to be a kind of director of another person and transfer some skills?
Actually, the picture for super connectivity is that I would continue working with the programmer and the two of us would complete the exhibit. So that's what I'm committed to doing. And then what I see after that is as next exhibits coming online, my goal would be, I mean, if I could find one person, that would be awesome, but I assume typically it's going to take two people to do the range of things that I do. There are other people, obviously not that unique, but they're harder to find. If you can get like 2 core people, then what I see my role initially is basically creative director, making sure that I've worked with this organization, I have the concept of the museum, I know where we're going, I understand the program artists. I basically direct them and work with them and vet their ideas, the things as, I mean, most creative organizations have this structure.
Well, my queries are not entirely unpersonal. I have a daughter who has a PhD in physics, in condensed matter physics, who decided not to pursue a traditional career in science. She got involved in business, which she did successfully for a while, got a little bit tired of that interface. Recently went to the DGI School of Business, actually, the one up on Bainbridge Island, which specializes in sustainable futures. And now she's, in some sense, just freelancing, earning her living by doing various kinds of things that involve this funny amalgamation of science and business and training and sustainability kind of stuff. She loves the internet. She's smart. And this just suddenly looked like something where she might resonate with the kinds of things that you're doing. Just a thought.
In the last 2 years, I've had 2 or 3 people. One person is working as a journal editor in the journal editor's office for Jacobs Camp, and contacted me and said, "Wow, I love what you do," because I was asked to review a paper. I said, "I'm totally out of the field here at this, you know." And she's like, "Wow, you're doing this, let me talk to you." So there are these people who, like me 10 years ago, were like, "How do I put these things together? Where can I go?" And it's a matter of finding them and getting them to find me, and then selecting who is good. And whether you work with, you know, there's 2 ways to go. One would go, you know, I think on the content possibly is very multidisciplinary. PhD people with good communication and writing skills, and they can very easily be trained into what the museum world requires or what the exhibit world requires. But on the other hand, there is, particularly for some of the concept and activities and learning theory part of it and the graphics, potentially going with people who are actually in that museum field. And it's sort of how do you, it's kind of who you get and saying, okay, what combination of people will make this work.
I think I should at least make some contact between you and my daughter. What's the best way to do that?
Email, yeah.
So maybe you can give me a card or something to write on a piece of paper.
Nepotism may win again.
Yeah, what the heck?
Susan really laid out the issues before us, before Davis decides to take on the issues out of the way.
Which, by the way, I realized did you actually get a chance to meet with Winston? And
this afternoon,
you're meeting with him this afternoon? Good.
So we'll know more about the end of the day. What I have been trying to do at Davis is in part to persuade the administration, starting at the top and then starting with the colleagues, that Davis could and should consider very seriously taking on science education and outreach as a major goal of the campus. And to my knowledge, there's not a campus in the country that really advertises itself as doing this boulder running and closer than the other. therefore there is an opening there. And I argue this is not that expensive compared to bricks and mortar and hardware. A very integrating activity could be very satisfying. It's a way of involving undergraduates doing all the kinds of things we've talked about undergraduates doing and a lot more. And so I'm hopeful that we're making progress on this. Again, sort of the first concrete indication will be whether Davis decides to take on EU.org. Because if I put on my Davis hat, I would say you should only do that as part of a bigger enterprise. Because I can't emphasize enough what we've heard at this meeting, synergy. Someone comes up with an idea to do X, and in fact it also is applicable to Y, and maybe even if it's better to do Y. And you don't have a group which is looking at this whole range of outreach efforts and meeting regularly to talk about it, you're going to miss out on many promising possibilities.
Well, that brings up Yvonne's suggestion that we actually need a formal outreach committee, which I don't think we've really ever established. I mean, we've had sort of ad hoc things, but I don't think we've formally established an outreach committee, which really needs to be at the level of our fellowship committee.
I think that is, again, something specifically we can do. We can do that pretty quickly. I think the executive committee would not be possible.
Yeah, so we should do that. That should be an item, a takeaway item for you and I to get going with help from Yvonne and others.
Now, but there is a question of naming. Do we call it the outreach committee or the engagement?
I like engagement.
Engagement.
Yeah.
Are you happy with engagement?
Yeah.
What do you think?
And really, just for the same reasons that whoever invented it, namely the engagement involves at once that you're part of the two-way street.
Yeah.
Outreach has still conveyed it in the sense you're standing up here preaching down there.
Yeah.
You are reaching out. You're extending a helping hand down. It does not imply you're reaching out as equals trying to solve together a problem that you can't solve separately.
Right.
I would say if you call it the public engagement committee, that you avoid the double entendre issue.
PEC, the public engagement. No, I think that, and that committee can also be charged with ICAM's role in moving the GSE forward.
Well, actually, along these lines, I've talked a little bit to a couple of people, but Francis Slakey is trying to get a network on science policy nucleated that would tie together people who are actually teaching courses on science policy at different institutions in the United States. And he's actually got a website which I believe he claims has 53 participants now. And he and I co-taught part of our courses together last year between Davis and Georgetown. Francis is a PhD physicist and one of the two chief lobbyists for the American Physical Society and a professor of public policy at Georgetown. In his class, the students' project is to lobby Congress on an issue of science. And they get evaluated on how well they've done in their lobbying effort. Not necessarily whether they get the legislation going, but have they actually gone out and talked to Congress people. In my class, the project was to lobby Sacramento on a particular issues related to climate change. So this connects, I think, to, I want to throw it out and see what do people think about this, because I overheard some dinner conversation about we should bring George Washington University into ICAM. But I think more plausibly, we have connections at Georgetown. Maybe we should try to bring Georgetown into ICAM. And what do people think about engagement, also including public engagement, also including work on policy?
you have the interest within your organization.
Well, that's
of people who want to put their,
Yeah.
and those are not necessarily the
Right.
people sitting
Well,
here.
we have certainly one branch that is much involved in that. Our new branch is Santa Fe.
SFI is now an ICAM branch?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
And Michigan is the second branch, which is involved with policy in a big way. Your Center for Complex Systems has Carl Simon, who's involved in everything that policy is a big part of.
Yeah.
So you could say building on Carl Simon and SFI one has maybe a way to go.
So Michigan and SFI, and try to recruit Georgetown as a branch. Because we have connections there on the science side and through Slate on the policy side.
What's the science connection in Georgetown?
Well, Jim Furricks. Jim Furricks has organized actually 2 workshops, and we're going to give them some travel money for this workshop on thermoelectrics and bar. I know Jim has some, as Yvonne can tell you, Jim has a few mixed feelings about ICAM, but we'll try to make him feel more positive about it. Just because I think we didn't give him the money to write a book.
Is Georgetown already an ICAM?
No, I'm saying we should recruit him. Yeah.
Georgetown's expertise is not so much in biology or chemistry or physics departments, but far more in its various institutes of public policy, international relations, etc.
Well, I think we should draw on that, but we also have to make sure we connect to the scientists that are there and offer the opportunities to them.
I mean, that actually raises an issue that we talked about a little bit earlier in the executive committee report, which is that one reason ICAM has been as successful as it is that it's had very high standards. High standards for the people who get involved in it, high standards for the institutions they represent. And we, in a sense, need to be sure that any institution that we invite to join or approaches us is going to bring to the table some absolutely first-rate people. This is at least partially satisfied by Georgetown because there was Daniel's buddy, Francis Slate. There probably are at least another dozen people. And that's all we only ask for 4 or 5.
That's all we need.
Plus high quality undergraduates.
They've got that portion. Well, let's see, maybe we should turn it over to, are there any ICAM issues that ICAM needs to be, it's an attenuated crowd, but are there any ICAM issues that ICAM needs to be addressing that we're not addressing, or that need to work better? You can always pat us on the back, but I mean, this is a chance to put out there the things that we really need to improve. And I know from discussions we always need to improve our web pages, so that's on the list. Looking at Anson. But are there other issues or specific things on the web page, for example, that you want to see developed?
Well, our web page, like everybody's web page, A, needs to be kept reasonably up to date, and B, can certainly be improved.
Yeah. But as we're talking about, it doesn't necessarily have to be completely blitzy, because the CADQP webpage gets millions of visitors every year. It's because it serves a basic function of its archive libraries of content.
Do we have, how much does it cost to put Google Analytics?
We have it on our website.
Google Analytics is
So we know how many visitors
Yeah, I can pull it up. I haven't done it recently.
That would be instructive to look at how we're doing vis-a-vis AV institutions, A, B, C, or D.
Well, there's no way we're pretty pitiful compared to most things like KTPs. So, but there's no reason why we can't become the go-to place on the kinds of science that we're interested in. Just KTPs.
If you were to create
as the premier institution,
As
the premier institution with its home on the web, at least devoted to emergence, we ought to set a goal of being damn good.
Exactly, and I think that's what we have to do. And for various reasons, we aren't, but we will be.
I mean, one of the points right now is the content is really directed towards members. It's a member website, and you're not going to get traffic outside of members.
Right, the KICT gets traffic outside of members because,
That's what the content's focused on.
Yeah,
That's
right.
that's what its current existing purpose appears to be.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for something that's not member-oriented, it's getting better in this incarnation and the last incarnation, but it's not all that easy to find your way around and figure out what's what. And so I would say improving the navigation and really going around what is it, what is our purpose, what is the information. If we have like 3 purposes, then we have 3 main headers on our site that can direct who wants to go to which purpose and direct people toward these purposes. And what is your purpose? You say, okay, we want to get a lot of traffic on our site. What is your purpose of getting a lot of traffic on our site? What, are you trying to use it as also some sort of public outreach, or is it really just the purpose of ICAM site, as opposed to your other outreach efforts, is just to provide information for members and member institutions and students who might be looking for fellowships and things like that?
I think we have 2 purposes, but they're completely mixed up, and the public outreach one is at the moment too weak. As a functional web page for our members, I think it's okay.
Right.
Still hard to find.
It's still better organized, yeah.
But if you, so the first thing is, one is figuring out what that outreach content is going to be and how you're going to vamp it up, and then 2, thinking about how do you organize that site so people who are coming for the research-oriented stuff, the academic stuff, easily go one way, and the people who are coming for the outreach stuff easily go the other way. And are those outreach people teachers? Are they the public?
Well, that's right. I mean, there'll be 2 aspects of engagement. There'll be engagement for the public and for teachers and things like that. There'll also be engagement of the archives of our web workshops, the archives of our schools and conferences. And that's aimed at a different audience. And then there's also just the basic services we offer our community.
Right.
So I see sort of 3 things there. But you're saying we should really instead of having this big laundry list of things, we really need to streamline that.
Mm-hmm.
And have
websites and something.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about the content management system, of course, is that you enable that directly. And then the other issue is that we have to evaluate whether the content management systems that we have been utilizing are the right ones to utilize for the different purposes that we have in mind. Right? Because another aspect of the site for our scientists is we want that to become a tool where they can create the virtual communities that will enable progress in their area of science. And right now, the current WordPress site can't really do that. The one that has been developed that's not online yet for the expression engine can do that in part, but it turns out that some of the facilities it has aren't really good enough for scientists, that the wiki stuff doesn't handle LaTeX, for example, which is pretty bad. So the question is, do newer incarnations of WordPress have that, or are there other freeware out there like WordPress that have that? And that's part of what's going to happen this quarter with the help of Yuval and Jamie digging in this quarter on the RA support that I'm giving them. So in case you missed it, I'm basically using support that would have gone to Digital Mud and directing that towards local people who are going to help me evaluate all this. And that's how they're getting their support this quarter and probably next quarter also.
WordPress has LaTeX. WordPress has LaTeX.
WordPress has wikis now?
It has LaTeX.
It has LaTeX. Okay, does it have wikis?
No.
Sitting through a lot of the meetings, if you have any ideas of things that ICAM could or should be doing and is not presently doing, or your thoughts on things that are doing that we can do better.
people that through our existing web pages and whatever web pages we have, there are branch web pages, and the problem always is if you ask the individual branches to develop their web pages and you're asking for a separate commitment to develop a web page, they can do that if they want to, but you can use what you already have on the ICAM web page, and as long as anybody from your branch registers, they automatically show up. You can customize that yourself. You don't have to create your own hosted web page at your institution. So I really resist encouraging people to develop their own web pages. They want to, fine. But it's just one more commitment, and it's unlikely to happen. We've already created the facility for you to just use it. And that's the message I want to send out.
Yeah, and I think another point is if you enter in the web page, you go to the links, and you try to open information on some members, the information is very poor. Many of the members, they don't have information about their CV. So we know that the things are not there. And I know that this from time to time is requested to the members to complete.
Well, and again, that's part of the problem. So the one way that we increased that information content substantially was we followed something that I believe Yvonne suggested or someone else suggested, which is that you just hire some students who go around, find the names, register those people. You tell them, hey, we registered you and we put down such and such information. And then their vanity kicks in, or not, and they'll go back and correct it if they need to, or they'll look at it and say, oh, that's fine, right? But then you do get something down. So we can continue to do that. We can continue to do that on an ongoing basis.
You're not careful.
Sorry?
It looks like stalking.
Well, it's a little like stalking, but sometimes it's the only way you get people to do it. I mean, they're not going to do it themselves typically. Because the problem is most people, even though it takes almost no time to do it, most people, it's just one more thing, It's just one more thing, so.
Yeah, and they may not see any particular advantage to having taken that time.
Exactly, right, yeah. I mean, you see the advantage, we see the advantage, but as Jim says, they may not see the advantage. So if you do it for them, then you sort of either provoke them to change it if they need to, and then maybe they'll get interested in customizing it. Or, they're happy enough and they move on. But at least we've got more information. The problem is we've added a lot more branches since we did that exercise, so we're still out of date. I mean, this is one of the other prospects of growing too fast, is that quality control isn't just making sure that our members are happy with the kinds of awards they're getting, but it's also keeping track of all the different moving parts of ICAM. And it's not an easy job, and it requires a lot of people power actually to do that. And I guess we could debate whether we should have dedicated student help doing just these kinds of things. That's probably what it takes, and that's the least expensive way to do it.
Well, there could be a slightly different approach, perhaps, because we organize a lot of conferences, summer schools, provide fellowships of different kinds. So, in a sense, many students, postdocs, faculty at those institutions are actively involved, except that they don't see a need to go and specifically register. Maybe we could, by doing this, we could generate a certain sort of ID that then would be required, for students, for example, to apply to the summer school, or for students to apply for the fellowship. So with that, we will be able to keep some sort of record.
We've done that before also, but I think we haven't. In other words, in order to actually see for example, for some of the password protected materials for meetings, in order to see those, we made people register. So they couldn't get to the material until they registered. So there's a kind of gatekeeping there, and we could do that again. You're right, and that's an easy way to enforce it. So therefore, if they're interested enough to try to take advantage of our resources, then by God, at least give us some information. Yeah.